Hello, Chaps and Chapettes. Welcome to the first edition of the Josh Castle podcast made for musicians by musicians. So this is going to be a series where I'm going to be talking to many musicians, YouTubers, doing little chats and finding out what makes them tick as a musician and talk about the projects that they are running. Firstly, today we have somebody who is a good friend of mine in the Guitarist state of mind, who recently released their first single, Buried Alive. Luke McFarlane, welcome to the show.
Hello, Josh. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Luke, why don't you give a little introduction about yourself and who you are and what you're doing?
Of course, man. So, hi, anyone and everyone who's listening. My name is Luke. I'm a guitarist currently based in Guildford. I'm a student studying creative artist guitar at the Academy of Contemporary Music. I'm also the one and only guitarist in the band State of Mind. We're a kind of hard rock, slightly progressive band. We take a number of influences from a number of different bands and kind of mesh them together in interesting and weird ways to get the songs that we produce. And other than that, there's not much about me. I'm a producer, guitarist, bit of a bassist, slight bit of a drummer, and there's not much more me than that.
That's awesome, man. So how are you finding it down at ACM at the moment?
At the moment, not very well. With the whole COVID thing, all students have had their studies postponed until the 25th of January. And with the lockdown, a lot of us had the choice to either stay where we are, and in my case, I couldn't because I didn't have any equipment, or run back to our accommodation, which is what I've done. So I've come back. We start our studies in about a week-ish. I think it's next week on Monday. And then we'll be going back to our studies, which I'm very much looking forward to. Obviously, with all online, it's a bit different, but we are making the best out of it. And we've had some really cool opportunities coming our way, and the students have kind of taken our own kind of way in this period where we should have been doing work, but we're not. So I've got some covers in the works with a few other ACM students.
I think that's the mad thing, especially with the last sort of year or so, the way that the COVID pandemic has affected a lot of people, musicians especially. Myself, I haven't been able to gig, and I'm sure it's been a trouble for you as well in State of Mind.
Yeah, absolutely. The last show State of Mind played was in February. It was just as COVID started to be kind of known in the UK. It wasn't an issue at the time. We even made a joke about it at our last show. On the kick drum, Evie put a "Wash your hands, you dirty pigs," and then a picture of the dude from Sex Education. We had him on our kick drum, and we kind of made a joke about it, thinking, "Oh, it'll just go away," but little did we know that a month later everything would change, and it would be like that for nearly a year, and we're still in the thick of it as an industry, as a country, as a world, and it's certainly changed things, but I'm sure, like we always do, we shall pull through it stronger and with different. We'll appreciate what we had more, because I'm pretty sure there's a song that says you don't realise what you have until it's taken away from you. I'm pretty sure every musician feels that way with gigs, with recording, with just everything in music. It's been a challenge for sure.
But we're going to see a massive influx, I'm sure, of people bringing out their own solo EPs and solo albums, because everybody, musicians especially, has had so much time at home to write and sort of produce music. So we'll start at the start of your story then. So how did you end up starting to play guitar? What was that first instant was like, yes, that's something I want to do?
Well, it's strange because I didn't think of it as anything much at the time. So for some reason, back in, I think it was late 2015, because I remember I had just moved school, and I started watching videos by Rob Scallon and Jared Dines. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, these are cool people doing things with an electric guitar. Never thought more of it, really. I think it's because I'd started listening to more heavier music, and YouTube, the algorithm had kind of given me that kind of thing to listen to. But then it all changed when I watched Rob and Lee's Miku video on the Andertons YouTube channel. as well as the Fretless ML2 video. Those two, for some reason, stick out to me as videos I remember. And I was like, well, what are these two guys? Well, they're playing the electric guitar. That looks pretty cool. And it kind of just gnawed away at me until eventually, for my birthday, I got some money and I bought my first electric guitar, which was an Ibanez Geo Series SA60, I think, which I still have. It's a different color now, but I used to. That was pretty much the only guitar I had for a while. And whilst now I'm more endowed with equipment, back then it was all I had. I had a little rolling cube amp that I got for Christmas, and I started playing, and I never stopped, really.
There was two sorts of people when they started to play guitar. You either had a rolling cube or you had a Line 6 Spider. I was the Line 6 Spider person.
I had a rolling cube Lite. It was the amp slash speaker. It's kind of what the Boss Katana Air is now, the kind of hybrid between an amplifier and a sound system. My mum bought it for me for Christmas, and I remember how it used to sound, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. You know, there was no mid-range. It was all gain, like all reverb, and I used to think that was the best sound in the world until I realised what an actual amplifier sounds like. But no, I wish I could get it back, to be honest. Like, just to hear what the sound was for me, because I've had the same equipment for the last 3 years, like tonally. And I've kind of forgotten what that amp sounded like, but I've listened to old videos of me playing it, and it's interesting because I didn't think that little amp would start what it has for me. Like, it changed my career path, kind of. Well, it did, to be fair.
I personally find it really cringeworthy when you go through like the Facebook memories or something like that, and then you just see a video if you played from like 10 years ago, and I personally look at mine just thinking, why the hell did I put that up?
Yeah, see,
so
if
bad.
The playing was better, if in my case, if the playing was better, I'd happily watch them. But I can't watch the videos of me first learning the electric guitar. Like, I remember I used to learn like old Motionless in White songs, Black Veil Bride songs. I used to think I was like a thrash metal guitarist when I really, really wasn't.
We've all been there. We've all been there. So you just mentioning with Rob Scallon, Jared Dines, and obviously Rob Chapman and Lee Anderton. So were those the sort of, like, you would say, the heroes that you started to look up to, or was there somebody else?
Well, it's interesting because I was only made aware of the electric guitar when I started listening to that kind of music, which would have been in 2014. But I never had an active interest in playing. I'd always kind of wanted to do music, but I used to have piano lessons. I used to have a guitar in like 2008 when I was only little. But I never really had an active interest in it until I saw it was like Rob Scallon, Jared Dines doing that kind of thing. And it was when I saw Rob and Lee and eventually Bea, Pete do all of that kind of stuff that I was like, I want to do that. So rather than having a record that I sessioned and played over and over again, I watch YouTube videos of these guys over and over again doing their thing. Like, it's what inspired me to play. So yeah, in a sense, they are my musical heroes. Rabea especially. That's awesome.
So you mentioned Rabea. Both me and Luke have, shall we say, a big infatuation with Rabea himself. What is it about Rabea? Because I'm sure we've both got similar aspects here, but what is it about Rabea that brings you in as a guitarist, you know?
Well, it's always changing, because I think Rabea as an artist is changing. When I started in 2016, his videos were when he was mainly with Rob and Dorje, and I was only made aware of him through seeing what Rob was doing. I used to see them function as a band, and I was like, oh, he's cool. But then I started watching his own videos. He put out the video, the Does It Gent Victory VX Kraken video, the little stoner rock demo he did alongside his Hayden amplifier. It was that. And I was like, oh, this guy's actually a really sick musician. I'm going to watch more of his stuff. And then he did the Hughes and Kettner stereo stuff. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, this guy's serious. And I learned about stereo amplifiers, the way he used to run with Dorje. And then that's when Tosca blew up. and it carried on from there.
It's awesome, man. It's awesome. Say him as a musician, I just don't think there's anybody else out there like him at the moment with the sort of the riffs and the I would say the engineering production side of things. It's genuinely amazing. So would you say that when you're producing sounds, tones, things like that, are you looking at Rabea for inspiration, or do you find something yourself and use
It depends.
that?
It depends on what I'm doing, but I will normally use him as a primary reference. So, for example, when I'm looking to go for the sound for State of Mind, I'll normally go for a sound that is inspired by Rabea, so a kind of very mid heavy gain sound, kind of pseudo British, pseudo American, somewhere in between the two, and slightly darker, not really aggressive in the mids, but still smooth. I'll go to Rabea first. I think, okay, what kind of sound can I get there? And then I'll see how my own equipment works, and then I'll tweak it to my personal tastes. Because at the end of the day, as much as I respect Rabea as a musician, I don't want to sound like him. I want to sound like myself.
I think that's the hardest thing for any musician, is because, you think we have all, I guess, had our inspirations all vary, but they all originated from like sort of one root cause, with Black Sabbath and things like that. So when you're trying to produce your own tones for State of Mind, why don't you talk us through some of the sounds that you've got in the song Buried Alive, which Luke will be doing a performance of at the end of this podcast?
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because I will never, ever want to stop talking about the studio experience. So that record was produced incredibly well by a gentleman called Dan Lucas. I was made aware of him from his band, Salvation Jane, who is actually the reason State of Mind exist. We were made aware he had a studio, and then we heard some of his records. As a band, we were blown away by the sounds he can achieve. In the description of this podcast, there'll be a show reel of Dan's work, so State of Mind will be on there, as well as the other stuff he's produced. It's really incredible stuff, and he owns his own studio out in the countryside between Ashford and Maidstone called Anchor Baby, and we booked there for 3 days as a Christmas present from our singer, and it was just the most incredible 3 days. The kit he has there is just mad. Even if you go on the website, just the stuff he has is incredible, and the sounds we got were inspiring. So back to the question, the main guitar sound on that record was I know it was a mid-80s, it was either an 83 or an 86 JCM 800 by Marshall Amplification. It was the the split channel 2205. It was something. Dan actually has a video on that amplifier, so I can get the exact specs should they be needed. We used a Marshall JCM 800 pushed with a Stone Deaf PDF-1X pedal. The Marshall itself sounded great, but I wanted a slightly smoother top end, so we just dialed the tone back and used it more of an EQ, just to shape the sound of the amp a bit more. And we used an octave pedal that was in Cubase. I think it was meant to sound like a whammy or a pog, something like that. And guitar-wise, we used my Chapman Guitars ML1 Norseman, which is modified with a different bridge pickup, and we used my Paul Reed Smith SE Custom 24. We double-tracked with those guitars. They went left and right for the gain sounds.
What did you find was the biggest? I wouldn't say it's a preconception, but when you're going into a studio, it's a completely different experience to sort of playing at home or playing on stage. Did you have to sort of adapt anything to that situation at all?
Well, in all honesty, Dan and I spoke quite a lot about pre-production in the pre-production stage, so I knew what to expect, because it was my first ever studio experience, to be honest. And I guess just not having the freedom to do what I want all the time, which is what I'm very graciously allowed to do in my own space. I can pick up whatever I like when I like. Whereas working in a studio, you're working as a band collectively to get something done. So I guess that was a change. But Dan, as a producer, is very much let the musicians be free in what they want to do to get the best performances and to inspire them. So it's it's hard to say if I had to change anything, because Dan was just such a gracious host and an incredible producer who knows how to handle musicians.
So was there anything about that sort of experience that actually surprised you, and then you kind of took away from that to, I would say, improve your ability, or to improve your songwriting or engineering or production, anything like that?
I think it was mainly the production, because the song itself isn't a very complex song to play, and I wrote the song about a year before we ended up recording it. But production-wise, just listening to the way Dan approaches the guitar sounds and lets them interact with the drums, the bass, how he builds a record from the ground up is very, very interesting. And it's something I'd never looked at before. So I was very, attentive during the mixing process, just to understand what he was doing and how to replicate that kind of sound, because it sounded huge. And just seeing him work is mad, and knowing the sounds he gets is incredible. So just being active in the production process really did benefit me as a musician, to be honest.
I can absolutely vouch that, because when I heard the single when it first came out, it's got, that lovely sort of crisp intro, and then all of a sudden that octave just punches you right in the chest, and it just comes out of absolutely nowhere. It's spot on.
Well, the clean sound was that was a Fender Telecaster with a Seymour Duncan quarter pounder. I think it was either a quarter pounder or some kind of small humbucker in the bridge of this Japanese Telecaster. Ran into a WEM amp, which I'd never heard of before. I've seen them in old studios. Yeah, I'd never heard of them. But we tried, I think, 4 or 5 different amps to try and find the clean sound, but none of them were right. Because I've got a very... it wasn't a clean, it was more of a crunch, but I didn't want it fuzzy in the bottom end. I didn't want it really harsh. I wanted a clean bottom end with a nice grunt in the mids. Essentially how I approach my rhythm tone, just with less gain. And it worked. We tried the Sound City, we tried a Laney, we tried the we were going to try the Titan, but the Titan blew up, or the power supply blew up. We tried the Cornford, which is actually the prototype of the RK1, which is an incredible sounding amp. And then I think Dan was just like, come on, man, you've got to choose one of them. But I was like, I don't know, I'm just not happy. And then Dan said, right, give me 2 seconds. He went to the back room, grabbed this amp out of nowhere, used the line out into the cabinet we were using in the live room. And on the first strum, I was like, this is the sound. This is literally my live clean sound. It was incredible. It's weird. I've never heard this amp before in my life, and it's literally how I dial in my amp for my clean sounds live. It was weird, but it worked, and it sounded great.
Do you feel like when you're going into, say, like into the studio, or whether it's approaching, writing a song and things like that, do you have this preconceived notion then that, like, you have everything laid out in your head of how you want it to sound, or do you find that it's just something will just go, oh yes, that works?
Well, with this record, it was very much, we were finding the sound of the band, so we were very much open to experimentation. We did have some ground to go off of, so our drummer Evie discussed the kind of drum sound they wanted. We've got bands such as Paris and Tonight Alive. Those kind of bands are really what the kind of drum sound was after. And then with guitars, obviously I'd expressed my options and what I thought we should sound like and what would work, because it's not what I wanted, it's what Dan felt was right and what Dan felt would benefit us. And he checked with us in every stage. And once we were all like, okay, yeah, that's correct, we went ahead and tracked it. Because at the end of the day, we as musicians and we as the band can want what we like. But as someone who's producing our record, it was very much his option to say, look, I don't think this is the right choice. I think you should, consider something else. But fortunately, he never had to, because we were always working together in what we wanted. And regarding experimentation, there's a bunch of little stuff on that record that I didn't think we would do, but we did. So we had Amy in a booth screaming into a microphone for all this weird stuff. We had some spoken word poetry. We had a Satan guitar channel, which I think still is the best thing we have on that record. All of these things I didn't know would end up there, but they did. And had we not had the studio, we wouldn't have been inspired to experiment with them, if that makes sense at all.
I think that's it. I think when you go into a studio sort of environment, especially like when I was watching the Tusk of Fire by the Silos documentary, which if nobody's seen it, I highly suggest
Oh, I
you
watched
check
that
out.
the night before we went in. I watched that the night before we went in.
And it's amazing when you see the production of like, oh, I didn't think that would go in there, or I didn't think that would go in there. It really does make a difference. Like, say, when Rabir used the Leslie Cube in, like, When Genghis Wakes, it's something that when you listen to a song, you don't hear it, but then when you take it out of isolation, you realise it's not there. And imagine that's been the same with Buried Alive.
Yeah, we had some, so in the breakdown, or so when the song changes time from 4/4 to 6/8, we pull the bass out because when we play it live, Sam normally stops playing and I'm the one that carries on the arpeggiated section. But we wanted something to fill that space. And Dan said, okay, well, we'll try this. So he grabbed an old Laney Supergroup amp. I think it was a 60s or 70s one. We put the PDF-1X in front of it with an old fuzz pedal of some form. With the octave pedal, and I think I've got the video somewhere. I was shaking a 90s Les Paul in front of the studio monitor to get the guitar to kind of scream at me. And in the build-up section, and then in the drop, it's just this really thick, raunchy, fuzzy belly to the guitar sound, which you'll hear in the end of the song as well. It added this layer of depth that we didn't think is there. Talking back to where we kind of wanted that from, when in the Abba Mason mix breakdown, with the synth and the octave layers they did in the breakdown. So where Bia just put a plain octave on a low gain sound on his baritone, he did the same thing there, and that was something we wanted to do, except we didn't want a clean kind of basis. We wanted this aggressive, crazy feedback layer underneath the track. So it was the same approach but different outcome.
So obviously, like, listening to the way that you approach music and production obviously affects, such as octaves, we're hearing fuzz, those are a key aspect to the way that you write and produce. So is there one effect that you feel like that you genuinely could not live without?
Reverb. Delay and reverb, wet effect, without a doubt. Like, I can have, like, the world's most aggressive fuzz sound or the world's meatiest octave, but I feel that without delay and reverb, I couldn't really play. I don't play with it a lot, but there are certain sounds I use that have a very dark, very moody ambience to them, and I feel that those to me are more important than my heavy sounds, because a heavy sound is a heavy sound, but a clean sound to me is more specific. Like, when you hear it, you're hearing more of the guitar rather than just an amp screaming at you, and I feel that delay and reverb is very much a key character to my kind of sound, much as it is to Rabir's. So yeah, I think delay and reverb most definitely are the effects I couldn't live without.
I personally never used to, when I guess, like, it's only been in the last sort of, like, 6 or 7 years that I've embraced it, but I remember before I never used delay and reverb. And then when personally for me, when I started to use it, I was like, oh, whoa, that sounds way better. Like, where has this been my entire life,
See, when as I mentioned previously, I had my Roland Cube amp, which was great, but I think it was 2017 or 2016. I wanted a new amp, and I bought the Boss Katana, which I still use to this day, because it had all the effects in it, and I wanted to experiment, and I used to try all the delay and reverb and stuff, like, on the amp panel, and I was like, okay, this sounds good, but I want to go further. And then I got the software for the computer, and that completely changed everything. Being able to fine tweak the wet sounds I use are just, it's so helpful, because you can get completely different sounds depending on the way your settings are, So if I wanted a more, I don't know, classic slapback sound, it would be a very bright delay set really quietly, or if I wanted a really warm, mellow sound, I would dial the tone out, increase the feedback, increase the level, and play to accommodate the effect. So it's crazy how much effects can influence your playing, even if you don't realize it sometimes.
Yeah, it's like the way I always talk about using effects, because people will look to me and go, "No, why do you need such a big, pedal board or whatever?" And it's just like, well, you think of making, you're making a curry. All these different pedals or different spices that just make that overall finished product a lot better.
See, I'm very much the same. I have a very large pedal board with a lot of things on it, but I don't use all of them at the same time. So I've got my foot switch at the bottom, which controls my kind of home bases, which are all of my main sounds. And then on those, I have effects in the katana, and then I've also got the pedals on my pedal board, which I can then add to get different flavors. So if I want a really massively spacey, weird sound, I'll use my Joyo Atmosphere and my Boss RE20. If I want a crazy lead sound, I'll use my Freak Out. If I want a bit crushed, broken mess, I'll use my Coopersonic Germaniac. Just different stuff like that. It's not necessarily all part of my sound, but if I want those kind of textures and flavors, I feel like those are the pedals I would use to achieve it.
Do you have anything that's always on?
Honestly, no. With my clean sounds, I've always got a bit of delay and reverb, but that's coming from the amplifier. It's mainly a dark modulated delay with a dark modulated reverb, so it's got this body, but it's not taking away from the attack of the guitar. And with my rhythm sounds, I've always got a boost on, but again, that's in the amplifier just to tighten things up.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So we'll talk about sort of everybody obviously knows about skill levels of being guitarists. Everybody's always at a different sort of skill level. Would you say anything that you have found extremely challenging in terms of techniques or in general playing?
In all honesty, I think my ear, whilst I can pick up parts quite easily and understand the nuances in them, without my comfort zone in like my equipment, I really struggle. So everything has to be perfect before I can even approach doing anything musically, whether it be writing, whether it be learning something. I guess just I've always been used to being in my little spot with my guitar and my amp set perfectly and a nice volume with a cup of tea and all of that. When I'm out of that, I really struggle as a musician. So I guess just working around my comfort zone, not just necessarily tonally, but also physically and mentally. That's something I need to work on, but I have been doing that recently. So, especially.
So what would you say? So what would you say is your biggest strength then?
Honestly, my ear for sound. Me and a friend's, because I currently in a uni accommodation. We were all discussing this last night. We all compare ourselves to each other, and we were all talking about our merits. And in my opinion, my best asset is my ear for things. So not necessarily my playing, but getting sounds, getting really inspiring sounds, or knowing pedals for someone, or knowing my gear, because I'm a massive gear freak. And certain production techniques. When it comes to the sound of things, that's normally where I come in. I'm very fortunate to have that, but again, I wouldn't say I'd be where I am if it wasn't for Dan, because Dan helped a lot in that aspect. So
that's awesome. I think probably as well that benefits you as well going into a studio. Like I guess we touched upon it, saying you've got that preconceived ear for the sound. You'll just know that when you've got that right sound and when you've got that sort of I would say finished article to what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, having just the ability to walk into a studio that's got thousands and thousands of pounds worth of equipment and just have at it for 3 days, it's a really gratifying experience. But also having someone as knowledgeable as Dan, as a studio engineer and as a friend, I'm always forever asking him questions. How we got this sound, how we got that sound, what would I do to do this, what would I need to do that? And I'm very lucky to be in the position I am, because it's so beneficial having someone as talented as that as close to me personally. So basically get yourself in with some really good talented people and you'll be fine in the music industry.
Which is also, funny enough, the hardest thing to do is to sort of be in that situation. So we'll really back into State of Mind. So how was it that you guys sort of like all came about?
Well, it's interesting because we all met each other at different instances in time. So me and Amy, our singer, we met years and years back, probably in like 2016, at an airsofting match. Because we met through some mutual friends and we shot at each other for a day and it was fun. Evie and Amy met because they're ex-partners. They met in a local game, like a computer place, like gaming place essentially. And then we met our bassist Sam in college because I used to do A levels, but then when I decided I wanted to be a musician, I went to college and we met Sam there. And we all just kind of knew of each other and we were like, okay, this is cool. But we never really actively wanted to pursue music until we went to a gig one night. It was in a local venue in Margate, which is where I'm from. And it was Milk Teeth were headlining, and I never really heard of them. I didn't really know what their music was, but at the end of the day, I thought, well, it's a night out with mates, so I'll go along with Evie and Amy because they like them. And then so the support band was Salvation Jane, which is Dan's band, and we heard them and we were like, Jesus Christ, we need to do something like that. It's weird hearing a band that have all the influences that you like and just sound like themselves. It's incredible. And we put the band together that night over a pizza and a bottle of amaretto and some vodka. And then a couple of weeks later, a friend of ours called Warren, he used to run these kind of multi-genre gigs in local pubs in our area. And it was our first ever show. He said, "You guys want to do something?" And we said, "Yeah." We rehearsed once, played a few covers. Salvation Jane made it into that set list. We did a cover of Cortez. And it went from there. Sam wasn't even meant to be in the band. Sam was just a dep because we couldn't find a bass player. And then he never left. We never said bye. He just kind of stayed. And it was the best decision we made. Because as a four-piece, we're really tight-knit, I think. And we've had our issues, but musically, we're all tight, we're all locked in, and we sound the way we do because of all of us individually. So it's very beneficial to have those kind of people.
So I've heard you mentioning obviously Salvation Jane a lot, and we talk about Tosca and Rabia. Are there any other bands that you like to pull ideas from to amalgamate into State of Mind?
I think we all have as a four-piece, we all have bands that we all take influence from. So Royal Blood is a big one. We went to see Royal Blood back in 2019. We saw them in our town in the Winter Gardens. We love them as a band, and seeing them live is incredible. We like the bands Paris, Tonight Alive. We take some influences from Paramore. A lot of people comment on our singer's vocals, saying that she does sound a bit like Hayley Williams, which we do know. But the thing is, we don't have a band that we're like, oh, we want to do that. Fortunately, all four of us are similar enough to work together, but different enough to not all want to do the same thing. So we all have this kind of unique approach to the sound of the band, which is why we sound like us. We don't sound like Royal Blood. We don't sound like Salvation Jane. We don't sound like Tonight Alive. We sound like State of Mind. And that's down to a balance between individuality and inspiration between the four of us.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So we definitely get in a very sort of, sort of the metal and progressive feel from you as a guitarist and as a musician. So where does sort of Brian May and Queen come into this?
I'm very glad you asked me that question, because as much as I am a metal guy, I love Queen. I love old stuff like that. I think it's more nostalgia, and I'm more of just a general fan of the music rather than it inspiring me personally. So I've kind of subconsciously known of Queen all my life because my mum's a big fan of them, and as I've grown up, I've heard their music. And I didn't really know of Queen actively until my mum took me to a tribute band of theirs up at the Winter Gardens, which is a venue, oddly enough, where we also saw Royal Blood. And I saw them live, and I was like, okay, this music is fantastic. And I'd started playing the guitar at that point, and I was like, I really do need to learn some of this music. So I got home, I searched Brian May guitar, and then learnt of the Red Special, and then the kind of obsession with it in kind of 2016, 2017 kind of grew from there. I've always wanted a Red Special, and very fortunately in 2018 I got one as my 18th birthday present, which I still have. It's with me here at university. It's a bit worse for wear. I need to get the strings changed, but it's still here. And I don't think Queen's music and the sound of Brian May's guitar influence my output as a musician, but they certainly do keep me playing, if that makes sense. So it's not something I want to do, but if I listen to it, I will want to play.
Is it that sort of thing where you'll be heavily listening to, say, Tosca or Carnival or, things like that, and then you'll hear, say, like personally for me, I'm a big Queen fan as well. I mean, I love Killer Queen. I think that's an absolutely outstanding tune, which probably doesn't get enough sort of recognition. So is it like when you listen to Queen, you'll just kind of go, oh, I've so missed that sound or that feel?
We very much had this yesterday. So me, Bryn and Yayan, all of us we're guitarists, multi-instrumentalists, and on the way back to Guildford, Yayan drove me back, and we put on Save Me, which I'd never really listened to before. And the first note of that solo, if anyone's listening to this, go listen to the first note of the solo in Save Me with headphones on or on speakers up loud. It is the most incredible experience just hearing that one note, because Brian's sound is so unique, and it's all the harmonics, it's everything. It's just, I can't compliment the sound enough. And it's like, it's almost otherworldly just hearing that. And all of us, we had Bryn's amp and we were trying to play it, and it was just, I don't think Queen they don't inspire the sound of me as a musician, but they do glue a lot of us together. Queen are a band that a lot of musicians can talk about and say, oh, I love this song, I love that, or what era of Brian's sound were you more into, and have you seen them live, like stuff like that. They're more of a foundational glue rather than a creative outlet for some people.
I genuinely challenge to find anybody out there that's a guitarist or a musician that doesn't have some affinity for Queen. I think it's just one of those bands that just everybody likes in some form.
See, especially with the Bohemian Rhapsody movie that came out, that's really kicked some people off, especially with the music thing.
Definitely. I think when people come across that, they were just like, wow. I think especially a lot of I would say a lot of kids and teenagers these days probably don't actually really know too much of Queen, and hopefully,
no, I fully agree.
And hopefully, just that movie will inspire people to sort of, obviously look down those avenues. So we say with like guitar solos, because personally for me, I've always found that Brian May is extremely underrated when it comes to doing guitar solos. And is there one guitar solo of his that you say that you just listen to and it's that sort of just euphoric feel that you get from it?
It depends on the mood, but if I'm just going to Queen and I hit shuffle, the 1975 record, A Night at the Opera, anything off that record, Bohemian Rhapsody, Death on Two Legs, just all of that kind of stuff. It's so inspiring to me, and hearing that sound there's nothing quite like it in the music industry, especially with Queen. So yeah, I'd say any guitar sound off of the 1975 record, A Night at the Opera.
There's not many people that can play a guitar with was it a sixpence and about 50 Vox amps screaming at you.
Oh, I mean, I've got my sixpences, because obviously with my Red Special, I don't quite have the gear to get the sound. I don't have an AC30, I don't have a treble booster, and I'm not Brian, so I can't sound like him. But I do have the bits to kind of get me in that vibe. They don't inspire the sound as much as the way I play, if that makes sense. So I play more like Brian when I've got the Red Special, the sixpence, the strap. I always do the leg kick when I hit the high notes like he does, kind of subconsciously, but it helps the way I play rather than the sound. And I think that's a big part of it. If you're not feeling the music you're playing, then you're just not going to sound right. And I think that applies to everything in music. If you're not feeling what you're playing, you're just not going to sound as good as you think you do. So
My personal pet peeve as a guitarist is when you see people playing and they just have zero emotion, or like if they're playing guitar on stage, they just stand perfectly still. They're just looking at what they're doing, blah 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 blah, doing a guitar solo, and there's just absolutely no feeling of emotion. Like, I don't care if you mess up a note or if you mess up a bend or anything like that. If you're showing some emotion, I would much rather prefer that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some feel faces when I play with the band live. It's always this one note in Buried Alive in the breakdown where we hit that major 7 in the harmonic minor scale, and I always pull this stupid face where I kind of pull my jaw into my shoulder, and I don't know why, but it's every time on that specific note in the song I always pull it. And then there are just other bits when I'm like playing lead and I'll pull some stupid faces. Even the video I did today with Bia's solo, I pulled some stupid fucking basses in that one, but it's because it's the way I express myself when I'm playing music. Music is as much as an expression as me as what my body's doing whilst I'm playing, and there's not really anything you can control, to be honest.
Oh yeah, definitely. We always see memes about what guitar players' faces look like when they're doing a bend, or like in
Steve Vai, John Mayer,
yeah, exactly, man. I like the fact that you brought up John Mayer, because he definitely seems to be a person that is very split and has a very divided opinion. People either really like him or people really hate on him. Where do you sit with John Mayer?
Honestly, I'm going to go against what you've said. I am perfectly in the middle. I don't love his stuff. I don't hate his stuff. I respect him as a musician, and I think he's got an incredible voice and an incredible sound. But I just don't really listen to him that much. And I think it's fair to say with that for a lot of artists.
I think there's a lot of artists out there where they're always going to be subject to divided opinion. Like, personally, for me, somebody that, like, when people speak to me, they're going to know, what music do you like? And I'll say, Rammstein, Metallica, Tosca, blah blah blah, and then they're always come to me and look at me really weird when I say Lady Gaga. But I think as a musician and as an artist, she's just incredible.
Yeah, I respect. I love her music. I mean, I don't actively listen to her. I think she sits in the same category for me as an artist like Pink. Although Pink changed in 2019 because I didn't really know who she was. My mum liked her, and I've heard some of her songs. I think everyone has heard So What. And I saw her live, and it was just I know you've seen Lady Gaga live as well, I think.
Yes, I have.
Yes. Seeing those artists live, they're not like, it's not music you listen, it's like you play or you actively try to copy, but seeing it live is a really different experience, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I've seen bands live that have genuinely underwhelmed me, and then I've seen artists and bands live where they've been better than I expected them to be.
See, I had the same with Pink, because I'd never seen her live shows. I didn't know what to expect, but then I got what I got, and it was just an incredible experience. Like, I don't think there are many artists that fly around the arena whilst still belting out a tune. It's incredible. It's an incredible experience. And I think pop artists have that ability because they're making, quite a lot of money from what they do. It's called pop music because it's popular. And they have that ability to create those live shows. And there are some bands in our scene that do it, like Rammstein and Ghost, from what I've seen, that really do focus on their live shows. But some people think it's more about the music. So, it depends.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what sort of, say, audience that you're putting that. It's essentially a product, isn't it? You're pushing a product, and it's whether that audience is, I would say, in the right group for that certain product, like you say.
Yeah, so you wouldn't get Rammstein's stage designer on a pop show, and you wouldn't get a pop show's designer for a Ghost gig. It's very much contextually appropriate to have everyone in their own areas, because Rammstein focus heavily on pyrotechnics and what fits the vibe of the song, very heavy, very industrial. Whereas with Pink and Lady Gaga and other live artists that are in that kind of area, they focus very much on the light shows and the smoke and the CO2. So it all depends, really. But I think the attitude toward their live shows is exactly the same between the bands. They just have different ways of expressing it.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So, in terms of like concerts, live shows, are there any bands like you have on a bucket list that you want to experience? Before, we can't do obviously with COVID at the moment. That's taking one thing out, but live gigs will come back soon. And who's going to be on your list?
I think I've got a top 5. So number 1, obviously Tosca. I've got them tattooed on my arm. I love them. I listen to them every day. Number 2, oddly, Billie Eilish. I love her music. I really do like her music, and the production especially is incredible for me. And seeing what she did at Reading in 2019, the way she controlled that crowd was incredible. Number 3, Queen and Adam Lambert. Every musician should go and see Queen at some point. It's just my opinion, but there we go.
I agree.
Number 4, honestly, probably maybe Dorje or Clockwork, just because Rob and that kind of thing is what started me playing the guitar, and it's kind of memories for me, even though it's only 5 years ago. Like, it wasn't that long, but to me it's like the birth of my playing. So it would be nice to go and see Rob and all that live, and I consider Rob a friend now, so it'd be kind of weird, but it'd be cool to see them. And number 5, I think, it's hard to say.
Give us a curveball.
I'm gonna open my phone. I'm gonna shuffle Spotify and no, Ginger. There we go. Number 5, Ginger.
Good shout.
Absolutely, Ginger. I've just forgotten. Ginger are an incredible live band.
I think they're one of the bands at the moment that have just absolutely massively blown onto the scene, and I think as a band, they are all incredible in their own rights. They're just absolutely outstanding.
Absolutely. I mean, as someone who hasn't really been exposed to Ginger that long, I only heard them when I saw the live session on Rabia's channel when he reacted to their live session of Pisces. And I, like a lot of people who've never heard of Ginger before, watched that video and were like, oh my god, her vocals. That's the transition. And from there, I love their music and I massively respect what she does. She's just such an incredible singer, and the band itself sound incredible. Like, the bass playing is amazing, the guitar playing is amazing, the drumming is spot on. And it's not often you see 4 pieces. A lot of metal bands are 5s, but it's odd. A lot of the bands I like have been 4 or even 3 pieces. So,
oh, definitely, yeah. Ginger's on my list. I mean, I was meant to go and see them when they toured, not last year, the year before, and I literally just missed out on a ticket, unfortunately. But that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. So we're kind of approaching the hour mark with this podcast. So we've got a few more interesting ideas lined up, and this is going to be a segment where everyone that I speak to, I'm going to be asking them this question, because as a musician, as a guitarist, as a drummer, as a bassist, you all have these dreams of things that you could own. So you're on a desert island, you've got 1 pedal, you've got 1 amp, and you've got 1 guitar. What are you taking?
One of each. Okay, 1 of each is interesting, because I'd have gone 1 amp, 1 guitar, 3 pedals. But okay, I've got to think practically. The guitar would be, I think, honestly, Bia's ML3, because I've seen what he does with it, and I've seen what I want to do with it, and I've got Chapman guitars already, and the kind of stuff I produce. I think that would be the guitar. The Pro Series one, though, because if money isn't an object, I want the bling. Amplifier wise, 800. No doubt a Marshall JCM 800, because I love the sound of them. Or even, to build on that, it would be the Marshall 35th anniversary amplifier, which Dan did a video on. It's every kind of Marshall amp in a box, and it's incredible sounding. So let's say, the Marshall 35th anniversary is the amp, and a pedal, Strymon Big Sky for the reverb.
That's a good shout. It's absolutely a good shout, that would be one hell of a
one
rig.
Of each rig. Yeah, because I've heard the 35th anniversary with what Dan showed me, and it's incredible. The guitar, obviously, we know what it can do. We know how versatile it is. And the Strymon Big Sky is the one of everything of Wet Sounds, and it's pretty sure it's got some delay machines in there too. So yeah, that would be my rig of doom. Interesting, because I hadn't thought of that.
What's on your Spotify playlist at the moment? What you're listening to?
Honestly, what I can remember, because I used to use Apple Music, but then I remembered I had Spotify for free for 6 months, so I'm just in the middle of migrating my library. So I'll just open up my Spotify now. I'm pretty sure it's mainly Tosca, Periphery, Rabia, and then a bit of other things, but there we go. Queen has come up immediately, so... Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo is actually a song I've been listening to recently, which is an incredible, incredible song. It's not a rock, it's not a rock track, it's not a metal track, but it's incredible. I would say anyone who wants to listen to just a good song, go and listen to that. It's amazing. Other than that, it's Rabia, Royal Blood, Monkey Lord, Tosca, Salvation Jane, Frog Leap, Black Peaks, just that kind of stuff, really. All that. It's a bit of a mix, but mainly progressive rock and metal.
Some outstanding bands there, I must say. Absolutely.
Black Peaks are incredible.
Oh, I love Black Peaks. I absolutely love Black Peaks. When I listen to Drones, when that bass just that really massive punchy bass just kicks in, I absolutely love that. The drums at the start of King, Home just has filthy octave riffs, man. Oh, they're an outstanding band.
See, I had the same approach when I listened to Carnival for the first time. Listening to the bass tone at the beginning of Goliath is an otherworldly experience, and that's why I've been so focused on playing bass recently, because I've recently acquired a Squier 5-string jazz and an Electro Harmonics Battalion and some stuff in 2 notes. And I've been trying to get that sound, and fortunately, because I know the kind of stuff John Stockman uses, it's been very easy for me. And it's so inspiring, just the vast width of sound he can get. I think he approaches his equipment very similarly to how Rabia approaches guitar. He doesn't want to just be a shredder. He wants to serve the songs with sounds, and he does that incredibly, I think, does John. Like the intro to Set Fire to the Hive, all of the sounds off of Carnival's Sound Awake album, bass-wise, are incredible. So,
absolutely. I think it's an album that definitely doesn't get enough credit, for sure. So, what's your plans for 2021? Have you got any goals? Have you got any ambitions? Are you setting yourself any targets? What are you doing for that?
Well, I want to play live at least once with at least one band, albeit State of Mind, albeit some uni things we've got going on. I just want to gig. I think every musician just wants to gig at this point. I want to get another record out, or maybe 2. We've got another record in the works, State of Mind. We've got that coming out relatively soon. But we'd like to get, maybe another one at least recorded, and maybe some more material written. And I think just overall get my standard of playing across all of my different areas up. So I'm a very good guitar player, but I'm not a very good bassist, and I'm really not a very good producer. I would like all of those to be adequate, which I think is definitely the goal for 2021, because I want to diversify what I do as a musician.
And that's a really good target. I think a lot of people can take something from that and just make themselves into a more well-rounded musician. I think probably everybody in lockdown.
That's how the industry works now. That's what we're learning at ACM. You can't just be good at your instrument anymore. You need to have multiple tools in your belt to make it, because that's what the standard is nowadays. You can't just show up to a record label with a couple of demos on a CD. You need to have a fully polished album, and you all need to be on your game to even get considered. And just knowing all of that, or even as a solo artist, you've got the same standards. So you really do need to be on it in terms of your own musician, because you can't rely on other people's money. You can't rely on other people. If you've got music that needs to be made, you make it yourself. So
absolutely,
having all of that readily available is very important, I think.
So I've got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one being, what's been your best moment in performing with State of Mind? And also, what's been like sort of the worst moment where nothing would just go your way or something went wrong, that sort of thing?
Okay, well, I'm automatically going to say best moment was recording Buried Alive and hearing the master for the first time. So it was recorded, produced and mixed by Dan Lucas at Anchor Baby, and then it was mastered by a gentleman called Charlie Francis from Horizon Mastering. And hearing that back was incredible. It's like it's your baby. It's
Sorry
it's
to
the
interrupt, but
sound of-
Horizon Mastering, didn't he do the first beer grinding gears from what I remember? I think. I can't remember.
No, I know who you're thinking. No, it's maybe it's not Horizon Mastering. No, it's not Horizon. Sorry, I've got the name wrong. But Charlie Francis, Synergy Mastering. Sorry, Synergy Mastering did our record. A guy called Charlie Francis. My mistake. I wish it was Horizon. Yeah, hearing that record back, hearing all the nuances that we put into it, it's incredible. Bad wise, I think every musician in 2020 and subsequently 2021 feels exactly the same. No one can do anything. We're all locked up. We're all locked up with our guitars, our amps, and our pedals, and we're being forced to do what we have to do. And we're being forced to make an income when we've lost our main income stream. Fortunately, there are some people, mainly very high in the industry, who can live off of, what they've made and what they can do and the ability they have because of where they are in the musical hierarchy and the musical food chain. But there are a lot of people, especially students, who just don't know what to do. We're having to sideline everything and just hope that the world gets back to normal. And
Absolutely.
Gigging is something I didn't realise I missed as much as I did until COVID, because I kind of just took gigging as we've got a show, that's cool. But now it's gone. I'm just like, the only thing I want to do is just get on stage with a loud amplifier and play some octave goodness. That's all I want to do now.
I think a lot of people have sort of like taken for granted the whole aspect of playing gigs and things like that. I think everybody collectively misses it, and hopefully
I'm going to go to every show in Guildford once gigs open back up. I will be at every show.
We'll see Snoop Dogg in Guildford then next year. That's on the cards.
Well, I've definitely got Download on the cards. I've definitely got Reading on the cards. I've got the stuff with ACM, and there's a bunch of local talent from ACM that I really want to see live. There's a guy called Martin. So his performance name is Crimity, I think. And he is very much into the Pliny-ish kind of prog stuff. He's got an ML3B guitar, and hearing some of his stuff has been great. And I'd love to see how he interprets that in a live context, whether he plays to backing tracks, plays with a band, how that'll influence the sound of what he's put on records. And I think it's just more curiosity at this point, but I miss shows, and I think everyone else does. So,
Absolutely. So, final question is, where can people find out more about you and State of Mind?
Okay, well, for me specifically, it'll be my Facebook and my Instagram. So Facebook, I am Luke McFarlane. Instagram, I am McFarlane_020. And the band-wise, we're the same Facebook, Instagram. So Facebook, we're State of Mind UK. Instagram is the same. You'll find the links on Facebook. And we're also on Spotify, Apple Music, any streaming service. Just search State of Mind UK, Buried Alive, and our song will be there. That'll also be where you'll hear about all of our releases and just cool things we have planned. I've also got a YouTube channel. I just do some covers every now and then. That's also on YouTube, Luke McFarlane. So just look for a Chat My Guitar and you'll find me.
That's fantastic, Luke. Thank you very much for being here. So you are going to be doing a performance now of Buried Alive for us all, which is correct. Going to be absolutely fantastic. So we all look forward to seeing that. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this first episode of the Josh Castle podcast. Luke has been an absolutely fantastic guest to have on here. Thank you very much for being with us.
It's been a pleasure, Josh. Thank you.
So make sure you go and like, subscribe and share and check out some of Luke and State of Mind's posts. If you liked this podcast, please just go ahead and drop it a like and put a comment in there, see what you think and see what you thought of these. And I'm sure Luke will answer any questions that comes up at the bottom of this video.
More than happy to, yeah. Any questions, problems, queries, bring them up, and I will speak in as much detail as I can because it's one thing I like doing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Luke. And until the next time, we shall see you all again very soon. Thank you very much.